Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. I'm down here in Palm Beach for Restoration Weekend. I received an award last night from David Horowitz's Freedom Center and delivered some remarks. Thank you guys very much. But let's get right into it. As many of you saw, Minnesota Senator Al Franken involved in a sexual harassment controversy during a USO tour when he was a radio talk show host in 2006. It allegedly happened while he was backstage with Playboy playmate Leanne Tweeden.
He stuck his tongue down my mouth, and I remember I pushed him off with my hands. And I just remember I almost punched him, because every time I see him now, like, my hands clench into fists, and I'm sure that's probably why. And I said, if you ever do that to me again, I'm not going to be so nice about it the second time.
And on the way back in the airplane, Franken posed for this picture, groping Tweeden, who had fallen asleep on her flight home. Al Franken apologized and is now being investigated by the Senate Ethics Committee. Democrats, who had been hammering Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore for his alleged sexual impropriety, condemned Franken, but not all of them really did. Here's Gloria Borger on CNN.
This is just kind of scratching the surface here. He was not a member of Congress at the time this occurred. He was just a comedian.
Just a comedian? So this is all a joke, Gloria? Is that your defense? Here's how MSNBC described what happened.
Then he took a picture, which his office now says was a joke, that showed him potentially not actually groping, but mock groping her.
So this was a potential grope, a mock grope. But it gets worse. The Washington Post, the paper that led the charge against Roy Moore, actually posted this article. I'm a feminist, I study rape culture, and I don't want Al Franken to resign. So where does the left stand on sexual harassment? Seems kind of murky. In fact, the left has now tried to pivot and make this about President Trump's history with women. Here's Urban Radio's April Ryan trying to divert the conversation with Sarah Sanders.
And I talked to Hillary Clinton today about the president's past and going back to what Matthew said. She said, look, I worry about everything from his past because it tells you how he behaves in the present and will in the future. What do you say to that as it relates to these allegations against the president?
I think Hillary Clinton probably should have dealt with some of those of her own issues before addressing this president.
Ouch, that hurt. But she makes a good point. The left is now being forced to reckon with Bill Clinton's past. Those of you who don't remember, Bill Clinton settled sexual harassment lawsuits. Bill Clinton was accused of sexual harassment by multiple women and was actually accused of forcible rape by Juanita Broaddrick. Here she is recounting the alleged rape to journalist Aaron Klein.
He held me down for a long time, and then he did it again. I was so ready for him to leave me alone when he started raping me again. And it was very brief. And he did get up and he straightened himself, and my mouth was bleeding and it was hurting. And he just straightens himself and goes to the door.
But Bill is defended by the media, feminists, and the entire Democratic Party. Times have changed. Here is Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York.
Is it your view that President Clinton should have stepped down at that time, given the allegations?
Yes, I think that is the appropriate response.
That has sent shockwaves throughout the Democratic Party. And this actually, Clinton family loyalist Philip Raines, here he is saying, Ken Starr spent $70 million on a consensual blowjob. Senate voted to keep POTUS, but not enough for you, Senator Gillibrand. Over 20 years, you took the Clintons' endorsements, money, and seat. Hypocrite. Interesting strategy for 2020 primaries. Best of luck. Joining me now to break this all down, New York Times best-selling author and conservative columnist Ann Coulter. So let's just back up and talk about Al Franken. Al has kind of a nasty history here. He's made jokes about raping Leslie Stahl. What else do we know about Al?
Well, MSNBC is giving him all kinds of credit for calling for his own Senate investigation. Have you ever heard of that before? What is there to investigate? He admitted he did it. You
There's
have
a
the
picture.
woman. There's the photo. We have the woman on, I mean, quite credibly, and she's not calling for his resignation. She wasn't even asking for an apology. She just said this happened. But
well, what about
to
mock groping or potential groping? I've never even heard that phrase before.
That photo is every woman's nightmare. It's a hideous thing. But the point I want to get to is the whole reason to have this Senate investigation is to throw it into limbo so nothing ever happens. This is doing nothing about it. This is not taking sexual harassment seriously. Also, I was having, flashbacks to the nonsense of the Clinton era with that Gloria Borger saying, "Oh, it was years ago. He was a comedian." Okay, I just want to know what the standard is. Don't care, but. Okay, the things you're claiming about Roy Moore happened 40 years ago.
Yes, there's a lot of that going on, and we all remember James Carville, who, Clinton loyalist, I think famously said, when you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park, this is what you end up with, talking about one of the women that had allegedly been with Bill Clinton. And Hillary herself, one of the primary orchestrators of the smear campaigns against the women who accused her own husband. Now, so for her to say this about this Republican, it doesn't really hold up, does it, Ann?
No, I mean, what happened when the whole business with Clinton broke, when Clinton came around with all of the bimbo eruptions being put out by, among others, George Stephanopoulos, who was the bag man rushing around getting affidavits from, and they were called on the Clinton campaign, bimbo eruptions. He brags about it in the war room. When that happened, we were just a few years after Anita Hill and her false allegations against Clarence Thomas, as the country found after watching the hearings. Sexual harassment the country was in a terror. There were lawsuits of women suing because their bosses had photos of their wives in bikinis on their desks. That constituted sexual harassment. And courts would say, oh, yeah, that could be sexual harassment. The country was insane with all of this stuff. And then Bill Clinton comes along, and Gloria Steinem, Miss Feminist, writes an op-ed in the New York Times announcing a new rule. Well, if it's a Democrat, you get one free grope. But it was okay what Clinton did because he eventually took no for an answer. You had all these prominent Democrats going on late night TV, making fun of the women, sneering at these poor women. Jennifer Flowers, Paula Jones. What Philippe Reigns just said is so outrageous because that was the BS we heard throughout the whole Clinton reign of, a consensual affair. No, Bill Clinton not only smeared all these women, but he perjured himself, obstructed justice, and suborned perjury in a lawsuit under the law liberals consider the most important law passed in the 20th century, the Civil Rights Act. It is an act of discrimination to treat women in this particular way.
What do you think about the fact that now you have some people in the Democratic Party kind of throwing the Clintons overboard? What does that signal to you? Does it say to you, Ann, that they don't need the Clintons anymore? They're not useful? Because now they're taking this so-called moral high ground. Do you think it's just political, or do you think they really believe it?
No, what it signals, and we keep hearing, but it's different now. The world has changed. The world has not changed at all in terms of the panics over sexual harassment, if it involves a conservative, but one free grope and so on, if it involves a Democrat. The only thing that has changed is this is the end of the Clintons' power. Harvey Weinstein's part of that, huge Clinton donor. Harvey Weinstein hired through underlings, private investigators to look into my private life, into Ken Starr's and other lawyers secretly working on that case, in our private investigators, just to smear us. Me for having written a best-selling book and doing some private legal work for Paula Jones.
How do you know that private investigators were hired to look after you, Ann?
Oh, why, thank you for asking. Do you know the answer to this? Because, thank heaven, one of my ex-boyfriends forwarded the letter to me from the private investigator, and that's what shut down the book. It was called Insane Clown Posse. That was the only thing that shut it down, and it was via Tina Brown. Harvey Weinstein, Tina Brown, Talk Magazine. It got shut down because of the private investigators.
Wow. All right, so where do you see this all going right now? Right now, there's this huge, the floodgates are open. Every day another shoe drops on someone. Where do you see in a year, in 5 years, where do you see this current atmosphere politically? 30 seconds, go.
I think it's great that the Clintons have lost their power. There has been this regime of men, liberal men, feeling like they can get away with anything. You couldn't, Jesse. But Weinstein, Al Franken. I mean, after what happened with Clinton and Democrats in the Senate applauding him. He said we saved the Constitution. What, wow. By him ejaculating in the Oval Office? Wow. That saved the Constitution? But that's what liberals said.
Right. If you can take today's kind of morality and the way we view sexual harassment and imprint that back onto the 90s, there's no way Bill Clinton would have ever survived.
Not the 90s. Absolutely not true. It was the Clintons only.
Or just the Clintons, whatever you say. All right, Ann, thank you very much. Exclusive Steve Bannon video up next. No one else has this. And later, a man with an emotional support squirrel causing controversy. The man and the squirrel will be here. More than a year after Donald Trump's historic upset over Hillary Clinton, she's still wondering what happened, not accepting the results of the election.
Between the Republican voter suppression you talked about and Russian interference, do you think it was a legitimate election?
I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy, and we don't have a method for contesting that in our system. That's why I've long advocated for an independent commission to get to the bottom of what happened.
Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon was down here in Palm Beach, where we obtained this exclusive video.
They do not think that this was a legitimate election and that we won legitimately. They will never be able to admit that the working men and women in this country basically revolted, essentially from both political parties, and elected a total and complete outsider, someone who's not a professional politician, someone who can connect, does not use the vernacular of the political class, but somebody that could connect viscerally with the working men and women in this country, and had an agenda of being a complete disruptor among the institutions that really govern the imperial city. If you think about it, and I'll talk a little bit more about it tonight, the geopolitical situation we're in that's driving the economics of this country, but the ascended economy of Silicon Valley and Wall Street and Hollywood in the imperial city of Washington, D.C. is completely detached from the reality of everyday life in the rest of America. And they do not believe, they will never ratify the election of 2016 because to ratify it is actually calling into question their own tenuous grip on power.
Joining me now, former Deputy Assistant to President Donald Trump and Fox News newest contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad. So, Dr. Gorka, do you remember in the third debate with Chris Wallace where they asked Trump at the time, are you going to accept the results of the election? And he, because he's a litigious guy, said, we'll see how it goes, because he was worried about it getting rigged. And Hillary, it just threw her off. She thought that was the worst thing to do for our republic. And now she's doing exactly what she accused Donald Trump would be doing, of not accepting the results of the election.
She is the perfect embodiment of what my radio buddy friend Chris Plant always says. If the left didn't have double standards, Jesse, they wouldn't have any standards at all. I mean, really, this is the woman who rigged everything. Not only with the superdelegates, with the questions from Donna Brazile. We know how she rigged everything to get her candidacy through the DNC. And what do we find out now? More than $12 million from her lawyer from the DNC for the dodgy dossier of Russian propaganda to undermine our electoral process in an attempt to take down the Republican candidate. If there's anybody that's undermining the democracy, it's Hillary Clinton, Jesse.
And she's shooting herself in the foot, but because she's blaming Comey and the Russians and fake news, she's ignoring the real reason why she lost, is because she's not able to connect with the working class voters of this country. And that's what's really holding the Democratic Party back, because they're so obsessed with identity politics. Now, Donald Trump had something to say about his favorite target. Let's take a look at this tweet. Crooked Hillary Clinton is the worst and biggest loser of all time. She just can't stop, which is so good for the Republican Party. Hillary, get on with your life and give it another try in 3 years. And funny that he said that, because Steve Bannon mentioned something similar, and we have that tape. Roll it.
They keep saying how brilliant she is, how genius she is, how smart she is. I think she's dumb as a stick. She's got every intention of testing the water to run again in 2020. And my response is, bring it, baby. Bring it. Would you not love to see a rematch of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? Come on.
So I think this is reverse psychology, psychological warfare. They're goading Hillary to take another run at it.
Steve has read his Sun Tzu. He knows how to do this. Look, wouldn't you expect, after the literally hundreds of millions of dollars the Russians gave her, Saudi Arabia, all the bad guys in the world pumped into her foundation, that she'd just go away and hang out on the beach with a large bottle of wine? But no, she just doesn't get it. And God bless her. Please, run again. It would be wonderful. Just do it. The rematch, I mean, we should have pay-for-view, okay, for the rematch between Donald Trump and Hillary. And it would give all the money to charity, okay?
Yeah, maybe to the Clinton Foundation. That's some charity.
I would pay to watch that, Jesse.
And everybody that says Donald Trump's poll numbers are really in the basement, he still, to this day, beats Hillary Clinton head-to-head in a matchup for president. So as bad as his numbers are, hers are even worse. Now, we talked about this in the last second with Ann. Now, Kristen Gillibrand now throwing the Clinton family under the bus. Donna Brazile, as you mentioned before with this tell-all book, throwing Hillary under the bus, saying how she rigged the primary against Bernie. What does this tell you about the Democratic Party now that they're really, the long knives are out for the Clintons?
I never thought this day would come, truly. The man who was defended to the death by the left for having sex in the Oval Office is now, with Hillary, literally being cast aside like an old garment. So this is a glorious day. This shows you that for them, Jesse, it's just about power. It's not about the poor man. It's not about the victims they say to protect. It's not about sexual rights, equality. It's about power. Power.
Now, lastly, as these people are throwing Bill and Hillary overboard, they're doing it for a reason, because they need to get the dead weight out so they can bring fresh candidates up to run against Donald Trump.
Like Bernie,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, fresh. Well, that's who I think of when I think of Bernie. No, you have Kamala Harris. You have some younger Democrats. Who do you see as the biggest threat, potentially, for running against Donald Trump in 2020 from the Democrats? Go ahead.
I don't see anybody who actually is a person who understands what happened on November the 8th. That would be a real threat. Somebody who understands why former Democrat-registered blue-collar workers in Youngstown, Ohio, voted for a billionaire from New York. Right. They just don't have it. If they had that candidate, I might be mildly worried. They don't.
You need an economic populist who understands the plight of working-class people, who sees these towns that have had these jobs and these companies shipped to China, and that's how you relate to people. But right now they have no one. Bernie, he almost had it, but something about Burn Dog didn't really connect with people out in the country. I don't know.
They're a big challenge, and I hope they're not watching. I hope your viewers don't include the DNC. If they keep doing identity politics, they're sunk, which is great.
That's right. All right. Dr. Gorka, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanksgiving and politics right around the corner. A warning to America next.
Oh, my God.
Turkey at me! Americans will be sitting down next week for Thanksgiving, and the subject of politics has the potential to ruin dinner. According to a Reuters poll, nearly 1/3 of all adults will actually avoid political conversations during the Thanksgiving holiday. But it's not just politics. Depending on your family, several topics, as you all know, can really strike a nerve. Here's an example from our friend Jesse Ridgway, known on YouTube as Mick Juggernuggets.
And I'm grateful for Mom for buying me a new Xbox One after my of a dad destroyed it. Looking bad today. What the hell are you doing? If you're not going to act right around there, be part of the family. You want to make a scene during Thanksgiving? Yeah, really? I do. Because if you don't want to be part of the family, then get out. What are you I'm not part of the family the way you act.
Oh, boy.
I'm not part of the family? No. You don't act right, you're not part of the family.
Oh, my God.
Oh, you threw turkey at me? Yeah, what's the matter? No. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Well, God. And you, I hope you got your great Thanksgiving video.
Here with a reaction video blogger and the director of urban development at Turning Point USA, Candace Owens. So Candace, I don't know about you, but last Thanksgiving, I cleared the whole table out. I don't know if everybody knows, my family's all Democrats. I just sat at the end of the table by the end of the night. I had my wine. No one wanted to have anything to do with me because obviously I was feeling pretty good. How about your Thanksgiving?
This is everybody's Thanksgiving every year. Of course you have to talk about politics. It's not even fun unless your family is at one another's throats. This is what I love about Thanksgiving.
Well, do you needle because you're a Republican now, do you needle your Democratic friends and family at Thanksgiving, or do you just let them come to you?
I go right into the fire. It is thanks triggered all over every single year.
Like cocktail hour, you're going right in with Bill DeWall.
As soon as you hit the mashed potatoes, as soon as you get to the mashed potatoes, you've got to say something like, I can't believe Hillary thought she was going to win.
Oh, my God. See, I just think that's very dangerous, and for all of you Trump people out there, you have a very angry side of the other side of the table. If you have Democratic family members, my advice to you, just lay low, eat the mashed potatoes, sip your wine, let them come to you first, be as nice as possible. It's going to be a long 8 years. One of the things, Candace, that I think is very effective when dealing with Democrats is humor. And Donald Trump agrees with me. Many people hate him for this. Let's take a look at Donald the comic.
I cherish women.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell. It's Rubio! It's Lion Ted. Lion Ted Cruz. He's a lion. Thank you. I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there.
Your tax guy's getting in on this, yeah.
You used to call me on the cell phone.
Thank you, everybody.
We love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. And we also love Puerto Rico.
So as much as it pains me to say this, Candace, Gutfeld actually gave me this idea to put together this Trump comedian montage. And the point that he made was that, Trump's having a good time. He's funny, he's loose, he's cracking jokes, he's enjoying himself, and this drives the left crazy.
It drives the left crazy, and the right absolutely loves it. I cannot get enough of Donald Trump's Twitter feed. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, I feel bad. This is the best thing ever happening in the world, and I feel bad for people that cannot enjoy it.
My favorite Trump tweet was, this isn't very presidential, but Fat Slob Michael Moore's Broadway show's bombing. I love when he does that.
It's the best.
It really is. I want to talk to you about GQ. The men's magazine named 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick as their Citizen of the Year, just because he knelt during the national anthem. So, people are really upset about GQ. They're, lighting the magazine on fire and stuff like that. Now, country star, I believe his name is Neil McCoy, released a new song slamming these kneelers, and it's titled Take a Knee, I Won't Take a Knee. Go ahead.
I think of those whose freedom was not free, and I say, take a knee, my...
Yeah, so obviously GQ's not doing too well after naming Colin the Citizen of the Year. What do you think about that?
I think it's an absolute joke. I mean, how do you become the Citizen of the Year when you don't even respect your flag? It makes absolutely no sense, but this is why the left has lost everything. I mean, it's absolute liberal lunacy, and it is the bigotry of low expectations. Black people, when they act this way, okay, they get put onto a platform by the left, and they shouldn't whatsoever.
So you're saying black Americans, when they do these kind of left-wing protests, whether it be Colin Kaepernick or, I don't know, what, Maxine Waters or something like that, she's out there yelling, impeach 45 every day. Now, she's a real star. Her star has risen in the American media. Are you saying that the media does this with black Americans when they go far left on purpose?
Absolutely. They're trying to inspire another generation of unemployment for black Americans. They do not give a platform to black Americans that are doing amazing, and there are tons of them. There are doctors, there are people that have their PhDs, there are people that are over getting their legs blown off in other countries. They will never become GQ Citizen of the Year.
So you're saying the media purposely doesn't elevate successful, conventionally successful black Americans in professional jobs, you know, doctors, lawyers, something like that, but they purposely elevate kind of radical black Americans because they want to, what? You said keep people down?
Absolutely. That is the narrative, and that is what Democrats have done historically. They have kept black people down, and they keep propping it up and making it seem like it is something to be admired. Unemployment, let me be very clear, is not something to be admired.
Well, Colin Kaepernick's still technically unemployed. I guess he's still taking some serious change from his NFL salary, but still has not been signed by the NFL. Candace, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Coming up, Stephen Baldwin breaks down Watergate, not the one you're thinking of. And later, a man and his emotional support squirrel. Is he being discriminated against?
Bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys.
We thought we'd bring in the wildest Baldwin brother, actor Stephen Baldwin, to break it all down. All right, Donald Trump took a little heat for drinking water during one of his speeches.
Oh. Japanese.
Kind of reminded a lot of people of Marco Rubio.
Than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
Wait, didn't Trump make fun of that?
This wise guy, this lightweight, is going over, and all of a sudden he's being drained, and he goes like this, remember? And he's off screen. I said, where is he? And then he comes back with water. And honestly, water's fine, but it should be in a glass. He's got the label of the company here, and he's drinking, and I've never seen anything like it.
So, Stephen, Watergate, do you think that's fair? The press had a field day with that one.
Well, of course, I was making the observation, Jesse, I called it even before I saw the videos. I said, watch, Rubio's drinking utensil will be smaller than the president's, thus little Marco, if you know what I'm saying. But, I think it's more Marco kind of like, if he looks kind of squirrely and apologetic as he's doing it, where the president just, wait a minute. Okay, let's go.
Oh, yeah. The president took his full time. There wasn't any panic at all. Yeah. I mean, he was letting people wait.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So that speech that the president was giving, it was about all his accomplishments while he was over in Asia. Now, one of those accomplishments, he brought back a bunch of UCLA basketball players from China because they were busted for shoplifting Louis Vuitton sunglasses. And this is how one of them thanked the president.
To President Trump and the United States government, thank you for taking the time to intervene on our behalf. We really appreciate you helping us out.
Now, is he reading that? He can't just memorize or just say, thank you, Mr. President? They had to give him a piece of paper to read?
Well, I think these are still reasonably very young gentlemen in a situation way over their heads. And yeah. I just think it's impressive that this president just went and got it done. You know what I mean? Just a phone call, and, didn't have to give any money or any other people back to their country or, any kind of weirdness.
Yeah,
it was just pretty
Obama
simple.
would probably have traded the basketball players for either pallets of cash or a bunch of Chinese prisoners or something like that.
But I think it's really refreshing, and it speaks to this connection the president has to the citizens of our country, where he doesn't waste time with silly stuff. He doesn't make a big deal about it. Okay, they messed up, and listen, they are getting punished, whether or not you agree how much or how bad. The one thing those guys want to do more than anything is play basketball, and they can't now. So I think President Trump handled it brilliantly.
Yeah, I do too. All right, also in the news this week, the subject of sexual harassment. Now, candidate for Ohio governor and state Supreme Court Justice Bill O'Neill decided he wanted to get ahead of any controversy and preemptively wrote this on Facebook, right? Now that the dogs of war are calling for the head of Senator Al Franken, I believe it is time to speak up on behalf of all heterosexual males. As a candidate for governor, let me save my opponents some research time. In the last 50 years, I was sexually intimate with approximately 50 very attractive females. It ranged from a gorgeous blonde who was my first true love, and we made passionate love in the hayloft of her parents' barn, and ended with a drop-dead gorgeous redhead from Cleveland. Now, can we get back to discussing legalizing marijuana and opening the state hospital network to combat the opioid crisis? I am so disappointed by this national feeding frenzy about sexual indiscretions decades ago. Peace. So what do you think about this candidate's play here, getting out ahead of the story?
It looks like a mic drop to me, bro. Any more questions? I think she sure seems to have it figured out.
It seems like he wanted to share even more of that.
It seems if the number's 50, then maybe there's a little more due diligence that might be performed, et cetera, et cetera. But
now we're getting information. CNN is now actually fact-checking the statement. They're doing a little truthometer, so we're going to find out more about that later. And we don't want to make light of this. He was kind of making light of sexual harassment. That's not the point. The point was this guy's taking very direct, preemptive action in case anyone had any issues. Now, do you fly anymore, Stephen? Because I want to show you some video. There's a flight attendant, got a little flamboyant while doing the seatbelt demonstration aboard Southwest Airlines.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we can have your attention for just a moment. Place it over your head, wrap that strap around your waist, and buckle it to front. Pull on the seatbelt. Your flight attendants are walking the walk and strutting the stuff to make sure that your seatbelt is securely fastened, your tray tables and seatbacks are in full upright and lock position, and all your carry-on items are completely underneath the seat in front of you.
Now, you probably don't fly commercial anymore. You're probably mostly private. So that's what you'd call a seatbelt demonstration.
Well, yeah, that's a little overwhelming. I don't know if it's some other version or interpretation of a Captain Sully there or something of the like, but it sure doesn't seem like it to me.
Very flamboyant, but that's what you get when you fly coach. You wouldn't know anything about that, but we just wanted the audience to see that video. Now, I know you have a new gig coming up, a new show, The Great American Pilgrimage. Tell us about that in 20 seconds. Go ahead.
Oh, my life is complete. Jesse Waters just said Great American Pilgrimage. This is just big. Yeah, I went out and had some fun. This other network, I'll let you mention it if you want, is that's working with the likes of Larry King and other folks like that. Jesse Ventura. They're kind of branching out as a news network into some more interesting content. So my show is called The Great American Pilgrimage. It's a lot like Jerry Seinfeld's show where he's driving in one of his fancy cars, drinking fancy coffee, talking to one of his fancy friends, that whole idea. But it's me in an RV. Oh, go.
It's you in an RV. All right, well, listen, it's RT Network. I think that's the Russian network. So Mueller is going to be coming knocking on your door and asking you a lot of questions. So good luck with that, Stephen. And I support that with whatever you're doing. It sounds like a great enterprise.
I'd love to come back when you're in the room, young man.
I know. Next time I'm down here in Palm Beach. Life's tough. All right, a Watters World exclusive up next. A man and his emotional support squirrel causing mayhem in Florida. Stay tuned.
What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I will hear you call. What if I lose?
You're probably familiar with an emotional support dog. You see them in airports, on trains, or in the mall. People suffering from things like learning disorders and motor skills disorders are allowed under federal law, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, to have these animals. Now, there's a Florida man, Ryan Boylan. He's taken it to a whole nother level with a squirrel named Brutus because he has severe anxiety and is now facing eviction from his condominium. And Ryan and Brutus, who's the squirrel is a female, join me now, I believe. Now, can I see Ryan, please? Ryan.
Yeah, I was unable to get her out.
You can't get the squirrel out.
She's asleep, and I tried getting her out. I sent a bunch of videos that I took today before she went to sleep, and hoping you could play those.
Okay, Ryan. So you have an emotional support squirrel. Why do you need a squirrel for emotional support?
Well, basically, I saved her life, and in return, she somewhat saves mine back every day. You know, it makes me really happy when I come home and see her. I get a very few hours of free time per day, and those couple hours, she just makes it so much better.
Wait, so you have anxiety or you're lonely? What is the diagnosis to justify an emotional support squirrel?
Anxiety and stress disorder.
Okay, how did you get this type of anxiety and stress?
I was in a car accident back in October of 2011. A drunk driver had hit me going 45 miles per hour when I was at a stoplight, and unfortunately herniated several discs in my lower back, rendering me unable to do a lot of activities that I used to be able to do, and permanent injury.
Yeah, no, herniated discs are extremely painful. I definitely am empathetic towards that. So why a squirrel as opposed to a dog or that type of animal? Because a squirrel's kind of like a wild animal.
Well, Hurricane Matthew came through Florida, and the day afterwards, I had found her underneath a car that was at a traffic light and about to run her over, and a group of people, kept saying somebody needed to do something. So I crawled underneath the car. I pulled her out from underneath the tire, and that's when I saw that she didn't have her eyes open yet. She didn't have any fur. All right,
so you rescued the squirrel, and then the squirrel became your pet, and the squirrel behaves?
Yes, I raised her, had the syringe feed her for 3 weeks.
Do you walk around with the squirrel like on your shoulder? Do you carry it like a baby? How do you transport it?
She sits on my shoulder, but she's more of like an inside cat. I don't take her out because
got it.
The one time I did, a dog had attacked the carrier that I had her in, and
that makes sense because dogs don't like squirrels. And the condo that you're living in, they want to give you the boot, and you feel like you're getting railroaded. But it looks like law is on your side. Is there anything you want to say quickly to the condo?
You know what? I'd just rather be the better man, and they can be negative if they want, push as hard as they want, but I am going to fight back. That's all.
All right.
That's basically
all right. Well, listen, Ryan, my best of luck to you with your condo squirrel situation, and I'm too bad I wasn't able to say hi to Brutus. I'm sure she's a beautiful squirrel, and hopefully she gets a great nap in and she's well rested. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, up next, some wacky questions. Time now for Ask Waters. First up, Brian Courtney tweets, "How are you able to take so many insults so calmly?" That's because I receive so many insults, I'm used to it. Next, Jack War Eagle asks, "Jesse, I can't emphasize too much the importance of regular dental flossing. Do you floss twice each and every day?" Are you saying I have bad teeth? That's all for us tonight. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.